In most cases, when we are discussing the recently ended SADC, we concentrate on political issues. And yet, when it was transformed from the Southern Africa Development and Coordination Conference, the leaders thought that they should focus on development of their economies in the region. Hello and welcome to Economic Forum. My name is John Masugu. This program discusses issues to do with tourism, with agriculture, with education, with human capital. We bring these issues and discuss them with experts with a view to unpacking the economic value. And our guest today is Dr. Davison, who is a development strategist and is the one who are going to be discussing issues to do with the value of SADC, especially to the corporate world. Welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you, Brother John. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Like I said, in most cases, we discuss the political aspects, and yet, even the theme of the conference has been to do with industrialization and innovation. What we want to tap from you is the thinking, of the corporate world, the business world. How, in your engagements, did they view SADC and the way forward?
I love the fact that you're going at great lengths to separate politics from business. And my view is that these two are very inseparable. But yes, I concede that you can discuss them distinctly and separately for very specific purposes. The experience from what I saw at the just ended summit, from a business point of view, was one of excitement. There was a lot of hope. You could see that the business people were represented, were highly motivated. They were looking forward to something that will change their space for the better. They were looking forward to something that would create massive opportunities for them. But I think most importantly, if you've got people coming from different parts of the SADC area itself, you know very well that we still have a lot of challenges in terms of the information symmetries. In other words, there's a lot of asymmetry in terms of information. There's a lot of dissimilarities, and those are a reflection of the different levels of development that each member state is going through, and perhaps also different conceptions of the world, shall I put it that way, largely because of where we have come from. And I think that is what you've belabored most of the time, the colonial history, its impact, how it causes dysfunctionality in our communities, and how it continues to some extent to hamper a very independent ability of all these nations to develop as they please. I can tell you very convincingly that from what I saw at this just ended, or the recent SADC summit, I attended the conference throughout.
Did you attend the industrialization week?
I did.
Yes,
yeah,
because that's what we want to start.
Exactly.
What exactly, did you take away from that week where industries from different parts of SADC were discussing, and you were able to meet other business people and then coming to the summit? I think we want to see the place of the business person there, and whether they were playing any role.
Of course, the whole conference was theirs. It was not a government conference. It was the business people meeting there to reflect on where they are as the SADC business community. Remember, there's a SADC protocol, and you're interrogating and looking at these interactions and exchange of ideas from that background. And these guys would have been looking very closely at what hinders their progress, at what enables what they want to do, whether the right environment was in place, and so on and so forth. The bottom line is that I got an impression that the business community in SADC is ready to take off. But in order for that to happen, a number of things, and this is what was recognized throughout, a number of things need to happen. The strengthening of the SADC business institutions, and of course working on cross-border business arrangements, working on the laws that don't speak to each other, working on business practices that probably are at variance, with each other, looking at the day-to-day experiences of the ordinary person as they are trying to move from one country to the other. Generally, the framework is in place, but country to country, we still have regulations that don't quite speak to each other. And it's all these things that they were talking about. Equally so, there is remember that SADC, what it is trying to do is to encourage intra-trade within SADC. But the conditions that exist today, this is the impression that you got from the business people, the conditions that exist today, the environment that exists today, the regulations and so on, are not quite at their best to enable SADC to attain what it is looking for. There was recognition of that, and they continue to work around it to make sure that we have a space that strengthens the resolve of the businesses to invest well within SADC, allow for the trade flows within SADC, because they're relatively low at the moment. And I think the task for the president of Zimbabwe, who is now the chairman of SADC, is to work around all these things and ensure that the aspirations of the business people within this community is enabled. The financial...
We'll go deeper into that, Dr. Go,
Yeah.
especially how the business community then expects to work with government, the president in this case being the chairperson, so that at the end of his tenure, we are all proud of what we would have done for SADC. But just to conclude this segment, did you feel that each one was able to put across what they can do for the success of SADC, these industrialists that you met?
The level of confidence was very high. The level of participation and openness was very high. The value and the quality of the information that was exchanged was very, very, very high. Not just from the business entrepreneurs and organizations per se, but remember that businesses work very closely with financial institutions. The financial institutions were able to put forward their expectations from the business community. What do you want us to do? How should we collaborate? What can we put in place to make sure that the whole SADC region benefits from the financial architecture that's in place today?
That's Dr. Davison Gomo. He's a development strategist, and we are taking stock of the SADC conference just ended in Harare in August, so that we see the position of the business community, what they benefited from there, and how they are going to be moving on, working through the chairperson, who is now our president, so that during his tenure, Zimbabwe succeeds to take SADC forward. So join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. Today on Economic Forum, we're discussing the views of business. From one of them, a business or development strategist, Dr. Davison Gomo. He was there in most of the meetings, and is sharing with us what he got, listening to different presentations and talking to different business people. We know that the theme was to do with innovation and industrialization. So the corporate world, the business people have to play a very critical role. Do you see that being done very easily?
I can't see why not, because we are into this together. Remember that the only business of government in any situation is to cause development to take place. Now, government does not necessarily have to do things directly itself. It creates a space where businesses can thrive because the conditions have been sorted out for them. But let me just say this: you're talking about innovation, technology, and so on. There are other very critical things that we need to think of even before we get there. You need to invest very correctly and at the right levels, the right quality of education. you're not going to get innovation until obviously there's investment in your research institutions, your universities, where most of our human capital is coming from, because it just doesn't happen like that. So education is critical. In this country, we know that we have gone so many strides ahead of many. You know that 5.0, etc., and so on in agriculture.
And during the industrialization week, I saw a lot of universities, displaying their innovation, and industrialization project. I'm sure you managed to talk to some of them.
Exactly. I mean, we no longer need just to talk to them because we can see what they are doing. It's a question of scale. Because remember, it starts there as outputs of research. And when they are viable outcomes, they need to be tested in industry. You go through the whole process right up to commercialization. But I'm saying it starts right there in those innovation hubs. So there's that need of the need for a symbiotic relationship between industry and your centers of higher learning, and of course the appropriate policies and right levels of funding for research by government. That is very important. Otherwise, industrialization that does not take place in a vacuum and on its own. All these players need to come together and have a very, very deliberate position on how to go forward. Look at it this way. We are investing quite a lot of money into that in Zimbabwe, but a lot more needs to be done. One would hope, obviously, that Zambia, Malawi, all these countries come in and cooperate and work together. I heard you say now that the president of Zimbabwe is chairman. Remember, the chairman chairs a group of people, and I think the role of the president is to create conditions where all these member countries can buy into a vision, into a way of doing things that's progressive and produces the outcomes that they want. We are not going to be driven by what you call factor-driven, rather, or investment-driven. It's time, obviously, the entire SADC space invests in knowledge and innovation. I don't deny that we have a lot of minerals, we have a lot of forestry, we have a lot of agricultural products. The question of dealing with the value chains intelligently and in a sophisticated way are critical. And that comes from creating an environment where those that start that process and business can work together to give us that, so that we are able to compete with other places outside SADC here in Africa, as well as in Europe, America, China, whatever. That's where we should be going long term.
Because a very important point.
Because if we keep on working well within the structures that we've maintained for many years, I can tell you, we will be there, going at a terrific speed, but nowhere in particular.
Yes. Very important points that you are raising. What is the general condition with regards to our economic relationship, to do with currency, to do with borders, to do, we had the preferential trade area at one time and so forth. Is it easy, to do business in SADC? Maybe you can also very briefly, give us your experience.
I think that's the aspiration of SADC, and it's a good one. And I think the leaders actually note, even the Council of Ministers, they actually note that there's still a lot of work to be done. As I was saying, you want to make sure that you create a seamless environment. But right now, that is not possible because we are at different stages of development. Our policies obviously need synchronization. Our various legal regimes need synchronization. The quality of, you're talking about border, what do you call it? The border post management.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, we are affected most because we have the biggest border crossing point in Bridge, as well as Chirundo. But the idea would be to have all these countries working together to create the transborder business that works well. But how does it work well if our only means of transport is road haulage? You want your rail to work very well. You want your air transport to work very well. You want the supporting systems to work very well. You also want to create an institutional framework that does not lend itself to corruption, because that eats a lot into the efficiencies of our systems, and in the end product, apart from the loss of time, the end product will lend into the market at a very inappropriate price.
That's Dr. Davison Gomo. He's a development strategist, and today we are taking stock of what the business community learned or took away from SADC, and how then are they going to be working with government in order to make sure that our tenure as the chairperson of SADC is very successful. So join us in the third and final segment of Economic Forum with Dr. Davison Gomo.
Thank you.
The success of any organization depends very much on leadership, and a lot of trust and confidence has been placed upon the leader of Zimbabwe, His Excellency the President Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa, and quite significantly, Dr. Gomo, he's the chairperson of SADC. Any significance that you want to point out to why it is important at this point in time for him to be the chairperson, yet his country is under sanctions?
No, I understand. I'm never going to underestimate the effect of sanctions on this country. But I think the fact that SADC recognized that a long time ago and even dedicated a day where we commemorate and try and think about how to get out of this challenge, that's as far as we should go, because as a country we are doing a lot to render the whole impact of sanctions on Zimbabwe useless, if we can. And I think that we are on course to doing that. But let's go back to the president of this country. This is a person whose entire life has been spent on public life, politics, to dealing with all sorts of problems, security problems, development problems, business challenges, managing communities, and of course international relations. I love it when at international relations level, when he says, we are friends to all and enemy to none. There can't be any better thing than that to say, because it's the highest level of maturity in political terms to recognize your enemies, but never worry too much about them, because really, end of the day, what can they do? They've made pronouncements, but that's as far as they can go. Remember, this is also a president who is saying, no one should be left behind. Let's take everyone. Inclusivity. Inclusivity is one of the areas that is causing problems throughout the world. If you look at Israel and Palestine, it's an issue of coexisting and living together. They're totally incapable of doing that. And we can go to so many other places in the world where inclusivity is not a problem. And the president is such an amazing personality in the sense that he's able to live with those that don't like him peaceably.
So even the difficulties that we mentioned.
The generation of trust in his abilities, in his leadership, is much, much easier because of his personality. And this is one person who's been able to put his personal interests aside and focus on the strategic issues that he should do as leader.
I think another thing that we should look at, despite, the economic, problems that we may have as a result of our relationship with the West, that we are now managing to do most of our projects. For instance, as we were preparing for SADC, I'm sure the funding was from within and not from without. Exactly. I think it's something that you want to comment about.
I mean, look, your agriculture is doing well. Your education has recovered. You can see that industry is taking off. It just means it's a matter of time before we cover the entire space, but moving we are. Yes, you're right. Who would have imagined that today in Zimbabwe we would have local construction firms doing roads from Beitbridge all the way to Chirundu? who would have thought that we could actually do what we've done in Harare? And I believe government is rolling that out to every city and corner of the country. What more do you want? It's that level of commitment and level of achievement and level of dedication to doing the right things that is given confidence to Zimbabwe by many people around it. Right now, it's the most exciting place for anyone to be at. And that's what you want in business. That's what you want in your politics. Remember I said, eliminate contradictions, remove all those. In its place, put a lot of peace. When people feel that the environment is peaceful, it's never going to be 100% peace. But when they feel that the space is very peaceful, they are given an opportunity to do what they want, the sky is the limit. And that's where we are today in this country under the president of this country. And therefore, SADC is inheriting a very, very exciting leader for the next 1 year.
Well, with the few seconds that are left, what are the overall benefits, just in a matter of seconds?
I think for me, the most important thing is that we managed to achieve two things. One, to resuscitate and reignite interest in Zimbabwe as an investment destination. And I think we've actually, to a very large extent, gotten our business to have confidence in the government and what is going on. And thirdly, we've achieved through this summit one thing that was always very difficult, to have our neighbors see Zimbabwe for what it is. And they had one of the greatest experiences since SADC came into life. And you can talk to all those people and find out Zimbabwe was just about the most exciting place to be at, and it offers a lot of hope. And that hope will radiate throughout SADC, all remaining equal. And of course, every leader staying focused, the citizens supporting their leadership, and concentrating more on things that are progressive rather than the negative social media and misplaced negative political, shall I say, discourse and so on. The people of SADC are focused, the people of Zimbabwe are focused, and I can tell you that we are in for exciting times as a country and the region.
That's Dr. Davison Gomo. He's a development strategist, and we're taking stock of how business can work with government in order to make sure that our chairpersonship with our president at the helm is successful as we lead the Southern African development community for the coming year. What remains is for me to remind you that if you have any issues that you would like to follow up on this program, you can do that on the numbers that are showing on your screen. If you'd like to engage with us about some of the issues that we're discussing here, including the views of our guest here, Dr. Davison Gomo, you can do that on our social media platforms, which again are showing on your screen. And if you have missed some of the episodes of Economic Forum, you can actually watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of our guest, Dr. Davison Gomo, a development strategist, and the production crew, this is John Masugu wishing you happy viewing.